Earth is habitable because of the living ocean. It's not just about rocks and water. It's the long history, billions of years of fine-tuning the creatures, changing the chemistry of the planet over long periods of time. And we're just beginning to explore the ocean. You never know what you're going to find when you dive in. But you know that when you do, you're looking at the history connected to the ocean.
The ocean is home to most of Earth's biodiversity.
Coral reefs are not just beautiful to look at. They are vital to all life on Earth, including yours and mine. Yet systems alive and healthy for generations to come.
No matter where on Earth you live. If the ocean dried up tomorrow, well, so would life on Earth. We need to protect the ocean as if our lives depend on it, because they do. You're going to find when you dive in. But you know that when you do, you're looking at the history of life on Earth, recorded in the lives of creatures, still doing what it takes to make Earth habitable for the likes of us.
with a broad spot and keen interest so as to give birth to landmark international agreement. The Korean government, for its part, has been learning a novel and robust marine debris problems we often cite a relatively macro level approaches such as from a particular part of the world could end up causing problems in anywhere. Therefore, there should be no capacity gap in addressing marine debris issues across the globe. And that is why binding international instrument to end marine debris must be developed and adopted in a timely manner. I sincerely hope that today's science event will serve as an opportunity for all participants to share success stories and creative ideas, to tackle marine plastic issue, and to explore ways for governments, civil societies, and academia to work together, and for individuals to change the way of life to achieve our common goals to minimize.
Really demonstrating the Republic of Korea's bold commitment to really reduce marine plastics pollution, and including, of course, the international community's commitment through the UNIA resolution. Very pleased next to introduce Dr. Ibrahim Abdul Latif Al-Muslimani. He is the Assistant Undersecretary of Protection and Natural Reserves from Qatar. Please join us.
Thank you, Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, it is clear that ocean pollution is a major threat of life below water. The plague of marine pollution is especially a major problem for coastal countries, and especially small island developing states, the seas. The seas are twice impacted, first by pollution washing on their shores from abroad and at home, and second, by contribution to climate change and sea level rise. From from plastic protection, consumption, and disposal. The overall carbon footprint from plastic estimated at 4.5% of global greenhouse gas emission, and the potential to grow up to 13% without urgent action. We know the problem. Now we must find a solution. We must work together to discover the risk reclaiming these resources developed. We must accelerate creative solution to change the direction now. Innovation is our only way forward, but we cannot do it alone. This is a challenge that needs the input of the whole world working together. Qatar is dedicated to supporting Barbados, Fiji, and the Pacific Maldives, Mauritius, and Samoa, Tobago, and Haiti. We support the work on the sea through the 10 Accelerator Lab. The seeds covering 85% of all seeds. In Barbados, these innovation accelerator labs focus only on the blue economy, also key to realizing the circular economy. We appreciate that UNDP is piloting the upscaling large innovative solution with the Ocean Innovation Challenge to foster and support transformational innovation to address ocean issue and marine pollution that can replicated and upscaled around the world. We look forward to learn more and bringing these innovative solutions to life. Thank you.
Thank you, Undersecretary, in particular for reminding us of the critical linkage between plastics and climate change. 4.5% of emissions relate to plastics production and disposal. So it has to be, it's not just a plastic pollution problem, it's part of the climate change challenge. Assistant Secretary General and UNDP Assistant Administrator and Director of our Bureau for Policy and Program Support.
Thank you very much, Anju. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me thank Qatar, our strategic partner, for supporting the Accelerated Labs network in the small island developing states. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank Sweden, who provided the angel capital to start the Ocean Innovation Challenge. And thank you very much. And also, I want to also say a word of appreciation to the Crown Princess Victoria of Sweden, who I know my colleagues have also informed me and our administrator many times that she has provided her personal support to this initiative. So thank you very much. So, so for too long, our coasts and the seas, have served as a waste sink for human activities. The science is clear, right? Marine pollution critically affects the health of the ocean, which is in trouble with the volume of both plastic and other nutrient pollutions that are reaching the sea. As we know, close to 10 million tons of different kinds of wastes reach the sea every year. The UN SDG 14 targets are among the most ambitious. Unfortunately, we're seriously delayed in reaching. So business as usual will not get us a healthy ocean. Innovative solutions will. So to address the ocean crisis, UNDP has launched our shared goal. And our goal of delivering 100 or more ocean innovations by 2030.
Equation on a number of these targets. And so that sort of discussion internally, and actually even then with our, what became, of course, one of our partners in this, Sweden. We worked very closely with Sweden in various elements of organizing the 2017 conference. So they were a wonderful partner. And in essence, yeah, the concept was basically gestated and born then of creating a truly new mechanism to identify, to finance, to mentor, to incubate truly new innovations for the ocean, and ideally cutting across most of the SDG 14 targets. And so the Ocean Innovation Challenge was conceptualized. CETA, as you've heard, provided the initial seed funding, and we later, of course, brought in NORAD as a key co-funder of the initiative. We've now launched 3 calls for proposals. The first was on what you'll hear mainly about today on marine pollution. The success of these calls really astonished many of us, including myself. The first call on marine pollution, in the 2-month period that the call was open, we received 609 concept submissions for possible consideration. We narrowed those down through a very robust technical review process to about 20 that we then further issued requests for them to submit much more detailed full proposals, both technical and operational. And we issued those proposals out for external peer review by technical experts in the respective areas. So that honed it down to what in the end was about eight final innovators. So a highly selective, highly demanding, our criteria for the OIC are obviously innovative, but also replicable, scalable, contribute to poverty reduction in some way, contribute into gender mainstreaming and other equity issues. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, the potential to be transformational, to change either a sector, or at least an element of a sector, a sector that was hurting the ocean in profound, even potentially global ways. That's what we're ideally looking for. Perhaps a bit ambitious and optimistic, but that was the model. So those 8 were selected. Then we chose we issued the second call for proposals on marine fisheries and aquaculture. Similarly, huge response, over 300 submissions. And I can share a little teaser now that as of this afternoon, we can actually officially publicly share the winners of the second Ocean Innovation Challenge call for proposals on fisheries and aquaculture. So you'll see a short video at the end. So please stay tuned for that. And then the third call went out earlier this year. We're still screening the proposals. Again, over 300 submissions focusing this case on area-based management, MSP, MPA, as well as certain elements of the blue economy. So we're equally excited about this third cohort and about this overall mechanism. So that's my just brief intro. But as I said, in a little while, you're going to hear much more from the innovators themselves about what they're really doing on the ground with these exciting projects. Okay, so my next speaker is Mr. Chun Kayu Park. He is the head of the office of our partner for this event, the head of the UN Office for Sustainable Development. Mr. Park.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. My remark must be very short also. Don't worry about it. Okay, I think I heard that Andrew introduced his innovation activities. I would like to introduce my office activities also. My office is just project office under the Department of Economic and Social Affairs. So, and also our mandate is focusing on the environmental pillar through needs-based capacity building programs for its member states and target countries, particularly the small island developing states, to address the issues related to climate change, water, ocean, and more. In this regard, today's side event, we are very happy to co-host with the UNDP and Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. I think this side event is very critical and very timely, as our oceans are at precarious state due to plastic waste and marine pollution. Every year, about 11 million tons of plastics are dumped into the ocean, which threaten both the people's lives and marine ecosystems. Furthermore, it is estimated that almost 60% of the world's major marine ecosystems have already degraded to a significant level. On the other hand, let us not forget about the interdependence of the SDGs. For instance, decreasing marine pollution not only will protect marine ecosystems, but also contribute to the achievement of other SDGs, such as SDG 2, SDG 3, and SDG 13, obviously. Hence, we also need to consider what SDGs are at stake. Given these circumstances, it's important that we strengthen our partnerships to other
to use this opportunity to speak about plastic pollution's damage on marine life.
Okay.
So it is missing the flock. So the area where the dolphin was found is a popular fishing spot, and it is common to see dolphin in tangle in fishing. Here, and we suspect the same happened to this dolphin. Luckily, it is still alive, and researchers named it ure, which means for a long died of an infection. Next, please. Entanglement in plastic leads to starvation or fetal infection and eventually death. Next. The next is ingestion. In January 2020, the first discovery of plastic debris ingestion by a fin whale was recorded in the Sea of East Asia. Upon necropsy,
Thank you so much, Professor Lee. Very powerful. Powerful images and science, showing that the science is very clear that plastics pollution in the ocean is doing severe damage to species and, of course, to ecosystems at multiple levels. So. Underscoring the urgency of this issue. So thanks to our small second segment panel here. And I'd like to invite the next four speakers up to the second or third segment of this overall portion. Mr. Jang, Mr. Bijador, Ms. Hughes, and Mr. Nawadra. Okay, welcome. And So now we're going to turn to talking about some of the solutions to pollution. And I'd like to invite our first speaker, Ms. Yuk-Yung Jang, who is the Deputy Director at the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries in the Republic of Korea.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's truly an honor and privilege to join this opportunity to share Korea's efforts in addressing this very important and growing issue of marine plastic pollution. The Republic of Korea has been developing a set of legal and policy frameworks, including the Marine Environment Management Act, to tackle the problem of marine contaminated sediment. Act was enacted in 2020 to address this specific issue. And next slide, please. And over the years, the marine debris policy truly shifted from a downstream collection-based to a whole life cycle of management of plastics. And based on these frameworks, recently Korea announced two important policies. On the upstream side, the plastic-free plan on household waste was established to fundamentally reduce the production and consumption of plastics. And on the downstream side, to reduce marine debris, we have established a 10-year plan to reduce the marine debris. And through this plan, Korea aims to reduce 60% of marine plastic inflow by 2030 and zero by 2050. To achieve this ambitious goal, we are
all our partners, your partners, for really organizing this session, and thank you so much to Portugal and Kenya for co-hosting this really wonderful conference. We tend to forget, what are we going to do differently? So let me just say 2 points on this one. First of all is, when we think of the plastics economy, when we think of the blue economy for the future, SDG 14 and the other remaining SDGs, obviously tackling the plastics and marine litter early on and in a robust and thorough way is going to be extremely important. There is no blue economy, and I repeat it, there's no blue economy if you're not going to tackle the plastics agenda forcefully. That's going to require a lot of different changes, from policy, regulations, looking at trade rules around the world, rules, and see how you can reduce all these externalities that make it really difficult to tackle such agendas. From the trade perspective, obviously we see that it has a human dimension to it. One of the hashtags is save our oceans for the conference, but it is really saving ourselves. And I think we should push ourselves to save ourselves, because when you look at the microplastics getting into the human placenta, seabirds, our food on the oceans, on mountains, obviously, you know, this is a multidimensional problem. And from the trade perspective, we need to find ways to reduce this. At the WTO, as you know, we have a lot of those transboundary global common issues being discussed and tackled. This is very encouraging because for the last few years we have not had a lot of new knowledge about these issues. Right now, thanks to UNCTAD and the Graduate Institute, we know that trade in plastics is actually much bigger than we previously thought, around $1 trillion in 2018, or around 5% of international trade. Now, this does not include hidden flows of plastics. When you export a car, for example, a car volume is around 50% of it is plastics. How do you account for this? How do you put numbers around this is going to be really important, because these are going to continue between countries to countries, from destination to destination. So we really need to look at these official trade figures and capture them smartly. That's going to require also that we have a system-wide change to transform the global plastics economy. It's quite encouraging that trade policies are starting to look at these things. At the WTO, for example, we have around 80 members who've notified the WTO between 2016 and 2019. 80% of these are developing countries, and given the volume of trade in plastics, these are going to also continue to have trade implications. A second point is really quickly on the scale of technology that's going to be required. We always think about, we're going to need investments, we're going to need millions of dollars, you're going to have to reduce the cost of adaptation for climate change, you're going to need technology, artificial intelligence to find out how do you recycle, how do you bring sustainable alternatives, how do you push for chemical recycling, bio-based and compostable plastics. But on a basic level, I mean, I'm coming from a lot of interest in the blue economy, but the basics have to be there. Are you training the people that you need to train to tackle plastics? Are you investing in the sustainable blue economy? Are you putting money where it needs to be in critical infrastructure, in natural capital? Are you looking beyond the GDP? Oftentimes, these questions are not always addressed. And the encouraging thing about this conference is that I think we are moving in that direction. That's really great, and that there are good policy pathways to look at that. But beyond that, I think we're going to need to do things very, very differently, if I may. I'm not saying that we all have the solution to this, or any institution has it, because if we had it, and if we had the political will, I think we would have resolved it, but probably one or the two, or maybe both, was not there. I'm quite excited because, when you see the innovations coming through, and I would like to commend Andy and the team also for these incubators, the youth incubators. That's really exciting. If plastics are going to be there for 400 years, right, in the ocean. Andy and I are going to be there, but probably most of us are not going to be there. But the new generation are going to look to that. We need that kind of innovation. And so I just want to commend all the type of work that those innovators are doing. On a last point, at the WTO, we have an informal dialogue on plastics. This is really important because just a few weeks ago, we came out with a package, the MC12 Geneva package. Very exciting because at a time of conflict, challenges, big players and developing countries as well, and big developing countries, big players too, all coming together and agreeing on a fishery agreement to eliminate harmful subsidies agreement. This was quite historic in the current context. And we really commend the members and the Director General and Ambassador Wills as well, and Dr. Ngozi, our Director General, for really working so skillfully for making this happen. And the credit goes to the members, of course. course. But if we can do this, we should be able to do something similar on the plastics. And I think that's the type of thinking we're having at the WTO, is to see how an informal dialogue on plastics can really look into that. We have 72 members who are discussing these issues. That's really representing 75% of global annual trade in plastics of the economy. Through our harmonized system, we can sort of track these. These are really exciting times. So in the next few years, we will continue to work with UNDP, with UNEP, hopefully with the innovators as well, to really bring some excitement around these topics. Let's not give up, because again, the SDGs are around the corner. It's going to be only more difficult if we don't tackle it early on right now, and the trade component has to be looked into very, very thoroughly into that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. And you're underscoring that, as a globally traded commodity, the inclusion of trade in the framework of how we manage plastic going forward is critical, just totally critical. Next speaker is Ms. Kristen Hughes. Kristen's director of the Global Plastic Action Partnership and a member of the Executive Committee of the World Economic Forum. Kristen.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Andrew, and thanks to my fellow panelists here, as well as those who spoke before us. I think a lot of really insightful messages coming from those, and in particular, some of the things that struck me, not just from the panelists today, but actually throughout this conference. And as Yvonne actually alluded to, this is an oceans conference, and you'll hear a lot of conversations throughout the week around the blue carbon and the importance of the ocean. What I maybe hadn't quite expected was how much conversation we were actually going to have on plastic pollution. It's an absolute dire time. It's absolutely important, and it's really great to see the level of highlighting on this very, very important topic. So I actually find that as we are going through this oceans discussion, it is really critical then that we do talk about plastic pollution. But what's also fascinating to me is that we're looking at this as innovations for SDG 14.1. I think we could almost include all the SDGs when it comes to plastic pollution. So many of our solutions are actually upstream. They're going to be in SDG 11, they're going to be in SDG 12, SDG 5, 3, and 17. So I'll leave you all to look those up rather than going into all the specifics now. But I might highlight on 17 in particular, and that's the one around partnerships. And so many partner plans and deliver ways of working that really will help to drive impact in trying to find the right solutions around plastic pollution. Within the World Economic Forum, we have created an organization called Uplink, and through that have hosted a number of innovation challenges. It sounds like we should connect with Sweden and UNDP as well, because certainly there are a lot of us out there trying to crack the code and find those innovators, but then also to scale them. So rather than just allowing for SMEs one-off in one country, how can we take some of the best practices and some of the insights from these innovators and roll them out in other countries to replicate them, duplicate them, and scale for impact? So really a lot of really interesting insights there. I appreciated also from an earlier panel the conversation around consumption. We're seeing an increase in consumption around the world, and with that comes an increase in waste. And therefore, we need to think about innovative solutions that will help us upstream. During the COVID pandemic, many of us, I'm sure, increased our takeaway usage, and they almost always came in plastic containers. So we're trying to think through, as we reduce our plastic footprint, so much of it needs to be upstream. A lot of people, a lot of investments going into recycling, waste recovery, and that's also very, very critical. But at the same time, we must in parallel also be looking upstream. How can we reuse items, and how can we refill? We at the forum, along with partners at WWF, UNEP, and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, have launched a portal that is specifically looking at reuse and refill models, trying to help bring some of these innovators to scale, and also to bring financing in there. We're very thankful. I mentioned again SDG 17. I'll come back to a critical partner who's in the room today, and that's the Global Environment Facility, the GEF, constantly pushing us to think upstream about these innovations. And it really, really is so very important. So in addition to trying to support these innovation challenges, may I also call on us all to look for the financial solutions that will bring those innovations to scale, and also find the opportunities to highlight not just the one-offs and small to medium enterprises that are very vital to local enterprises, but also how can we bring more of those to life. So I want to thank my fellow panelists here as well as those before, because again, some really positive insights around national action plans and innovations both up and downstream. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kristen. And last speaker for this session is Mr. Stefania Nawadra. He's the Director General of SPREP, the South Pacific Regional Environment Program. Definitely.
Thank you very much, Bulavinat. And I must say I'm really encouraged to be speaking on the same panel as the World Economic Forum and WTO on the issue of plastics and marine litter. I was in Geneva last week and had dinner with the Pacific Island Forum ambassador to the WTO. And she was really excited about not only the negotiations on the fisheries subsidies, but the new discussions on plastic in trade. And asked for our technical assistance in supporting her in progressing the push from the Pacific Island missions, who I understand were a strong voice in the plastics negotiations at the WTO. I say it's encouraging because just 5 or 6 years ago, we wouldn't even dream of sitting next to the WTO and the World Economic Forum discussing plastics and marine litter. SPREP is the Pacific's Environment Intergovernmental Organization. We were formed in 1983. We have 26 members, 21 of which are small island developing states. Marine litter and waste in general has been a big issue in the Pacific. Many of our countries are drowning in a sea of waste, especially our small island states, atoll states. We generate very little plastics ourselves. Most of it comes from further afield. And this is why we need global cooperation. UNEA 5.2 was a watershed moment for us, since it was the first time that we really gained traction at the global level to address this as an issue. Before UNEA 5.2, the Pacific put out the Pacific Regional Declaration on the prevention of marine litter and plastic pollution and its impacts. I'm glad to say that most of the things that we had in our declaration have been captured in the terms of reference for the INC process that we will be going through over the next 2 years. We intend to be very strong voices, very strong moral and ethical voices in this process, and also provide whatever technical evidence we can provide from our end on the need to put this globally binding legal instrument in place. I'd like to touch on a few other waste streams that you may not normally think about. that affects us in the Pacific. We'll suffer from the impacts or the potential impacts of the waste that's been left behind. In 2003, I led a team that did the USS Mississinawa pump out in one of the most remote atolls you can think about. This is people still go around in what should I call them? Sarongs and topless women. That's how primitive this place is. And unfortunately, they had the tanker sunk there. And it's also the site of one of the best turtle hatcheries in the Northern Pacific. We managed to pump out the oil from there, removing the threat, but this is only one of many such vessels that are around the Pacific, especially around areas like the Iron Bottom Sound in Solomon Islands and Cook Lagoon in the Federated States of Micronesia. The other fishing fleets, long liners, unworthy to be, or unseaworthy, but they still come and operate in the Pacific. And unfortunately, when they run aground, there's no insurance, there's no way of tracking the owners down because of the many layers of ownership. And maybe this is the area that organizations like the WTO and the World Economic Forum can help, because they are better suited to track and know how these companies operate. And finally, on the final thing that I'd like to touch on is the issue of disaster waste. We had a major 10-year project with the program with the Japanese, where we improved all our a lot of our landfills in the Pacific. But because we had large cyclones, Category 5 cyclones, all that work was put to waste because the volumes from disaster were just so enormous that we couldn't cater properly in the limited time we had to absorb these large volumes of disaster waste. On a more, just to end on a more positive note, I want to just highlight a partnership that we have with Swire Shipping, where they provide shipping free of charge for waste that can be taken out of the Pacific to places where they can be safely disposed and safely processed around the Pacific Rim. We've done this since 2018, and the success has led to a recent announcement at the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention Conference of the Parties 2 weeks ago in Geneva, that there will be now a global partnership, called the Global Shipping Partnership, to help small island developing states around the world to move their waste to places where they can be processed properly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nawadra, for bringing the Pacific perspective to our discussion today. So we're a bit behind schedule, so I want to go right to the last panel, the panel discussion among the Ocean Innovation Challenge innovators. Mary Matthews, the project manager, will moderate the discussion. Please come on up.
All right. Thank you all very much, and thank you all for being here. We're running a little short on time. Come on up and sit down, y'all. Let's do this. Well, these are our ocean innovators with UNDP. They're our first cohort, and we're super excited to have them all here, especially given that for many of us, this is the first time we've gotten to travel in a couple of years. So we're really excited. Really, a lot has been already said about the UNDP Ocean Innovation Challenge. I think the biggest thing for me, the most exciting thing, is getting to work with people who've got such great, wonderful, creative ideas. And I do want to thank again Sita and NORAD for making this wonderful job possible. We're going to try to go as quickly as we can. First, I'd like to start by asking, you guys are going to do this rapid fire, right? We got this rapid fire? Great. What is the most striking quantifiable impact that you are seeing? And how is this impacting the communities, the industries, and the target beneficiaries that we're working with? And because this is rapid fire, less than 60 seconds each. Paolo, go.
Thank you so much, Mary. So we as Adelphi and the Zero Waste Maldives, we are working on introducing a EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme for plastic packaging in the Maldives. So it's a 2-year project, but so far we achieved a very good result in having the EPR mentioned in the waste tax that's currently under discussion at the Parliament. So basically this will pave the road towards the introduction of EPR. In the last months, we have engaged more than 120 stakeholders. And once that we have developed the roadmap, that's the next step of our work with the local government, we aim in having in the medium long term 100% of the plastics entering the Maldives. Maldives relies a lot on import. 100% of this plastic basically declare in order to understand the size of this problem. Then once the EPR is in place, we are going to have 90% plus of the producers and importers part of this EPR, and having by 2025, 50% of the total plastic properly managed in order to boost circularity, and this could help also investors, for example, or recyclers entering into the Maldivian market and applying solutions that are beneficial for the entire country.
All right, George.
How much would your efficiency and productivity be affected without your digital apps in your daily day? So poor wastewater management could also be solved with digital and intelligent solutions, and we are using them to help water utilities to identify problems with existing wastewater treatment facilities and solve them. We are helping water utilities to reduce the amount of nutrients entered the sea by above 60%, to cut marine eutrophication and use this amount of recycled nutrients to produce biofertilizers to address food security. We are also using our digital solutions to improve the treated water quality to address water scarcity, and working with the stakeholders in Cape Verde to implement a circular economy that could create opportunities for other commercial solutions.
Great. Tamara.
Hello. So at Fortuna Cools, we make biodegradable insulation to replace expanded polystyrene packaging. And so the secret there is this amazing material, which is coconut husk fiber. It's actually widely treated as agricultural waste, but we get to work together with coconut farming communities to upcycle that material and turn it into top performing insulation. And so we get to provide additional income to the poorest sector of the Filipino society, which is coconut farmers. We're also creating jobs in rural communities where we process this material. And we're also avoiding CO2 emissions from husk incineration, all while replacing the plastic alternative. And so to put that into numbers, to date, we have upcycled nearly 200,000 leftover coconut husks into insulation, sourced from more than 300.
Perfect. Luis, over to you.
Thank you. So at Ficosterra, what we do is we provide and we manufacture seaweed-based fertilizers, which we can supply to the environment with a triple win situation. Farmers win by getting more productive crops. Nature and oceans win by reducing the runoff of pollutants. And finally, the consumers, all of us, we win by getting healthy, affordable food. And in terms of numbers, basically in the two sites that we have been doing the OAC channel challenge, we have been able to avoid into the oceans more than 500 tons just in 1 year, 500 tons of mineral-based fertilizers, nitrogen and phosphorus avoided into the ocean. Huge amount, thanks to you, Mary, and your team.
Thank
you so much.
Ariel, over to you.
Thank you. So the challenge that we're working on is microfiber shedding, which is all the tiny fibers that come off of your clothes. And on a systemic challenge like that, it's really complex. We believe that if you don't have everyone at the table, including sometimes those invisible actors at the table, then you're not actually going to catalyze transformation. And in this case, the invisible actor for the apparel sector are the manufacturers. And so there's not much conversation looking at upstream emissions, and there's a lot of emphasis on what is the downstream, what can you do with your washing machine? This was about looking at upstream solutions. And this premise was validated this year, actually, when there was research that said upstream emissions were on par with downstream emissions. So it's one of the major contributions to microfiber shedding. So with this catalytic funding, we were able to do this inquiry into upstream. How do we reduce emissions in upstream manufacturing? And partnered with a local research institution, a major brand manufacturer with manufacturing for major apparel, fast fashion, and identify which manufacturing processes, which type of yarns, and which type of yarn construction actually contribute to microfiber shedding. We'll take those insights and then begin to give manufacturers a tool to hold a different type of conversation with the brands. And then if this were to scale over time, I would say Southeast Asia and Asia contributes about 32% of global manufacturing. And it would be equipping that manufacturing base with the ability to have a different type of conversation with their brands on reducing microfiber shedding.
Awesome.
Thank you.
John.
Well, thanks, Mary. Hi, everybody. Yeah, Duke University, we've been working on a plastics policy inventory. This is a tool that we're aiming to use to help us all track what governments are doing to respond to the problem of plastic pollution. So it's a globally, publicly available, searchable database that's got about 600 laws and regulations from around the world in over 34 languages, introduced since the year 2000, all trying to combat plastic pollution. And we're working now with the support of this challenge to add the evidence base, such as we have it, to understand which of these policies and laws are working and which are not, and what we can learn from that. And we hope that in the coming years, this can be a tool that we can all use to track how countries and how governments are complying with an international plastics treaty as it emerges, and also to help governments design new laws and policies, drawing from what others have done.
Perfect. And Ed.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much. Okay, in 1C, we figured out how can we go from words to action. What we do is that we develop environmental policies, and we figured out that when we create the environmental policies from the community to the government, we got the support of the people. So when we got the support of the people, it's easier to have success. Before we did it differently and we didn't succeed at all. So this is a really important point in here, because we have this question in all these forums. How can we move from words to action? If we got the support of the people, we will be most likely to succeed. In our case, we already banned around 18 beaches in our country as non-smoke areas. We're promoting extended producer responsibility in plastic and metal and other items. And what we expect that we already create a model that we can replicate around the world, trying to bring everybody together and not just working from a desk where we just make like environmental policies. The idea is that everybody get together and we move forward to have excellent results.
All right. I want you guys to know I am the luckiest person, and this next part is gonna make you want my job. You can't have it, I still have it. I want you all in a few short words to tell us how you are changing the world. And I want to go start with Eduardo and work back this way.
Thank you, Mary. I think we create environmental policies from the communities to the governments to promote peace for the ocean in the world. That's our mission today.
Yeah, thanks. We're working on a tool to help us all track how governments are responding to the problem of plastic pollution and hopefully design better responses.
Well, thank you. We're changing the apparel manufacturing sector by equipping manufacturers to drive the conversation.
Thank you. Well, for decades, manufacturing and fertilizers have been really causing a tremendous imbalance in the sea. And now Ficosterra will be helping a little drop to regain balance by taking to the sea what was originally coming from the sea.
All right. And products that are built to last years rather than millennia.
Well, summing, I think our mission, we are developing digital solutions to facilitate circular economy for the wastewater treatment and also to engage much other stakeholders to capturing from the lost resources that could be recovered in novel products.
I would say that we are working with the government to stop this country from drawing in an ocean of plastics.
You guys are so awesome. Thank you. And thank you for all that each of you are doing to really improve and transform the ocean. I know we've got a few folks here who will want to talk to you, and I urge you to reach out to our innovators as well as through our webpage, oceaninnovationchallenge.org. And now we've got a very exciting moment where we're going to announce the finalists who will be our round 2 Innovation Challenge cohort, who are going to be starting up their first year as you're finishing your second year in sustainable fisheries. Here we go.